fecal transplant.
Wait, they just put somebody else's poop in you?
Yeah, I could like smell what was going on.
If it works, great. If it doesn't, well, we lost a segment of our population.
So many times we release these drugs without any idea what they're truly going to do in a mass population. So we've been drugging ourselves for 20 years, but then you have to start asking like, well, why?
Everything's kind of corrupt in a way.
Welcome back to the Alpha Hour podcast, where a couple of betas try to pretend like we're alpha.
Then we started talking about hemp. We started talking about how the fact that that farm bill in 2017 basically opened up the hemp world. And I just don't think that they saw the ingenuity of people.
It wasn't opened up before 2017?
Hemp was illegal.
I know in the United States, but they can still grow it in Canada, I think, right?
Yeah, but it wasn't legal here.
Okay, so it was just 2017, huh?
Yeah, Trump signed that bill, and that's when remember the CBD craze
That's
of like 2018?
why it's blowing up. Yeah, because I knew that there was a few companies, supplement companies, where they would use hemp. It was like hemp protein, and they would have to have it grown in Canada and have it shipped down here, so it's so expensive.
Hemp's like a pretty useful plant, and it grows like stink. And the thing is, the reality, it's a cannabis plant. It's a little different in the sense that it has more CBD, but you can breed it differently just the same. Like it's like, you can get weed with more THC or what have you, but then they're finding so many compounds now, so many cannabinoids. THCV, HHC, Delta 8, Delta 10, Delta 9. You can basically get high off of all of these drugs, and they're all technically legal now. So you have just a rampant, basically legal weed. You can go online and just buy weed now. And you can buy vape, edibles, doesn't matter.
So if it got legalized or whatever, or regulation was pulled in 2017, how come we haven't seen more products other than things that get us high pop up that are promoted as hemp? Right? Because it's been,
CBD.
4 or 5 years?
CBD.
Yeah, but I'm talking, because didn't they say how hemp paper is like stronger,
That's
like
a good point.
Hempcrete, like concrete, but hempcrete. So that's what I mean. If it's, and maybe they're still working on things, but you would think that something would have come out by now.
You're right.
Of a product where they say that it's super beneficial. I'm saying beyond.
It's probably byproduct of them producing all this stuff. So they probably have a lot of waste, stems and this and the other thing. So you're right.
I'm curious. I didn't realize that 2017 was when it got.
It's recent.
In the US.
And then I think they underestimated the ingenuity of all these labs. I mean, they're out there just extracting things left and right. They're taking out this little cannabinoid, this cannabinoid, this cannabinoid. We've made some pouches that have had various cannabinoids in them, and they're interesting. I don't think it's the world's greatest delivery system, but it's very interesting, So it's wild. I mean, the way that you can just literally go online and do that now, I'm like, who's sweating even the fact that weed isn't legal at this point?
That's true.
I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, there's just no difference.
There's some innovation happening. I think it's by state, but even those like the CBD doggy trees, they're freaking fantastic.
Do they work? Okay, so they worked for your dog because they didn't work for my dog.
You probably just need.
Maybe I need to give her more.
Yeah, like we just got a new round for Blue because he's psychotic and he has like social anxiety when we're not around, or separation anxiety. But those things.
That's social.
But that's like the one thing that's aside from like when we take him to the vet and they give us like heavy duty drugs, but it just chills him out.
I think CBD is a useful treatment for real anxiety. And that actually is an interesting thing. Did you guys catch the study out of the UK about serotonin and depression? This just came out, I believe, yesterday. One of my medical journal things that they send me, I was reading it, and they found that and here's the thing with these studies, is like always,
there's always an asterisk.
Correct, because you could do 10 studies and you may find 5 and 5 or 9 and 1, and 10 and 0 never happens. So, but this was to my eyes when I read it, was a pretty good study, and it basically showed that serotonin had very little to do with depression, which is wild because
before they were saying that less serotonin means you're more likely to have depressed.
Correct. So the drugs that they have used for 20 years in the United States are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And so what that does is between the synapse, so you have synapses in your brain, and they shoot little chemicals across the synapse.
They're constantly doing that.
Always.
Okay.
And dopamine, serotonin, what have you. Serotonin, they have what's called reuptake. So the serotonin goes between the synapses, and it will go somewhere else. These stop it from getting reuptake. So stop it from getting taken back, and it leaves it between the synapses, and they thought that was going to be a cure for depression.
Because it's a continued level of serotonin.
Ups the serotonin.
Because it's... Okay. Gotcha.
It lets less of it go away, for lack of a better way to describe it. There's this new study now that shows that, like, there's not a ton of correlation between depression and serotonin levels. And they went in and they actually, like, measured blood levels of serotonin, measured depression, did all these things, and they just didn't find a big correlation. So we've been drugging ourselves for 20 years.
Yeah.
No, and I'm not saying that's like be all end all science, because in all honesty, I think they have some efficacy. No, and the thing is, but then you have to start asking, like, well, why? Why?
Yeah.
Because
Is it just a placebo, or...
Well, and even if they know nothing about the brain.
That's what you know what I heard recently, and as someone who's not super scientifically like forward, know everything that's going on, I didn't realize we know so little about the brain.
Nothing.
Like, I was watching a series on Netflix, How to Change Your Mind, and in one of the episodes he was talking about it was just on mushrooms. And he mentioned, he's like, we know very little about the brain. So he said, the author, and he did this documentary, he said, if any doctor tries to tell you we understand the brain, they're full of shit. Or he said, anybody who tells you we know a lot about the brain, they're full of shit. We don't know very much at all. Quick shout out to the sponsor of this video, Fully Loaded Tobacco-Free Chew. Check out the description of this video or the show notes to get 20% off your next order.
I don't even believe it's necessarily just the brain. I think the brain's the hardest. I just think that we're cockier about the other organs and such. I mean, in the last 6-7 years is when they've really started to, like, talk about the gut.
Oh, gut biome. I take my... Yeah.
And, like, prior to that, like, that wasn't a discussion. Like, the second largest dopamine and serotonin structures in your body are in your gut. So it's like, you know, like when you have, like, there's a reason that when you get anxious, you feel it here. Like, there's a reason that these things are connected. I just don't think we understand so much.
Yeah.
And I think that we think we do.
Yeah.
And it's always one of these things where I get, like, whenever I hear someone talking about, like, oh, this is this and this is that, this medication's going to do this, I'm like, you don't know that. Yeah. You don't know that. And the thing is, like, I'm not saying that medicine's bad, but I'm saying so many times we release these drugs without any idea what they're truly going to do in a mass population. And there's a reason that there's so many FDA recalls of these drugs. They're not effective. So many times they do more harm than good.
Think about it. It's just really a process of evolution. We keep trying different medicines, just like in the old days we were talking about growing the marijuana and smoking it. Hey,
it's no different.
You can figure it out.
We're
really no different.
We're testing something. If it works, great. If it doesn't, well, shit, we lost a segment of our population, but our whole
but you
goal
know what's
is to keep
wild?
evolving. Keep
all
going.
these, like, drugs that are, you go look at, like, the World Health Organization drugs that are, like, essential drugs. They're all from plants. Like, all of our good drugs were plants. Like, penicillin was fungi.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, these, and then they, you know, of course you've extrapolated, but, like, that was the first antibiotic.
Yeah.
And so when you don't have plants already giving us the information, synthetic drugs, like, the monoclonal antibody drugs are, like, those are, like, the true miracle of modern science. I think that other ones are just not. But, like, every other drug is just, like, from a plant. Ivermectin. It's used across the world. You can't enter the United States without ivermectin unless you go through the southern border, because that's fine. But, I mean, it's like, it's wild. So there's something to that. Like, the old knowledge that we had is probably, like, lost for the most part, but it doesn't mean it was wrong. There's nothing to say that somebody wasn't using penicillin long before anybody in our modern society was.
Exactly. That's what I mean. I think in, like, 500 years, like, we'll look back on who we are. Like, we all are cocky in our own, like, kind of piece of evolution and our generation. But, like, the guy who was first discovering aloe and just laying leaves all over his body. Like, he probably thought he was the shit, and then it becomes just like, whatever, it's normal. And then we keep coming up with new medicines and remedies for things. There's going to be much more sophisticated and like isolated things, I think, probably in our lifetime still. There'll be stuff that is happening right now that's prescribed that we all find acceptable, and in 20, 30 years
It
it
would
could
be nonsense.
be like, that was absolutely stupid.
That was my point with the SSRIs. I'm like, is that gonna be something where we look at it and be like, whoa?
Well, and that's one thing, actually, when you go do ayahuasca, they tell you, like, you cannot be on SSRIs at all. And
you have to taper those down.
yes,
You can't just stop those
so
drugs.
and to be honest with you, being able to do ayahuasca is one of the reasons that I got, because I used to be on Vyvanse, which is like Adderall, right? And they said, you can't be on these types of drugs to do ayahuasca. So that was one of the ways that made me consider, like, hey, maybe I'll get off of Vyvanse. Like, maybe I'll taper them off, because I really wanted to do ayahuasca that bad. So it's pretty...
That's a great incentive.
Yeah, right. And it's like, oh, okay, that kind of
I have to stop my
off of it.
freaking Ritalin extended release. Like, yeah.
No, but the gut you were saying, I think I've heard nowadays they say it's almost like the second brain.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like whatever you're eating is going into that gut, and like I take probiotics now, and I've felt a little bit better since I started taking them.
Probiotics are tricky. They do work. The tricky thing is getting through your stomach.
Yes. So I know that's the one that I take. They have like an outside pill and an inside pill because of that.
So there's some argument that can work. And then then you hear, the argument is like, oh, well, just eat this and eat that. And then but I mean, what's crazy is like fecal transplant. I mean, that's like truly a treatment.
Sounds so messed up. I don't
know,
even...
but it
so wait,
freaking works.
Wait, they just put somebody else's poop in you?
Yeah, they legitimately like put it in a turkey baster and squirt it in your butt.
That's crazy.
Well, we do that every weekend.
So it's basically
we do that every weekend anyway.
Well,
in
a roundabout way.
So once the bacteria gets to that,
it colonizes the colon. Where they use it a lot is Clostridium difficile. So C. diff is a bacteria that happens a lot of times, almost all the time. It may be present there a little bit. Maybe you have a little bit of C. diff, but it never gets the opportunity to really like take hold. And then you go do a course of antibiotics, classically in a hospital. So much shit is done in a hospital, just kills people. But you go take an antibiotic, a strong one, in the hospital, and then it kills all your normal flora. And then the Clostridium difficile, the C. diff, overtakes the colon, and then you're just a disaster. Like you cannot stop shitting. You're ill. It will kill you. But the way that they combat that, and the fact that it's not like first line treatment at this point is crazy, because the actual treatment right now is to like try and hit it with more antibiotics. The hell of it is the fecal transplant works like crazy. They literally squirt it up in there, and they're trying to restore someone else's normal flora into yours to make the C. diff compete with other bacteria for space.
Is it like blood types, or you can use anybody's poop?
I don't believe there's a poop issue. Huh. I don't think it's not like an organ.
It's not like, what are you?
It's not like an organ. It's not like it's going to go to your, it'd be like if you licked my finger or you lick Sean's, you're exposed to our bacteria.
God.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like,
I'm more interested about the bacteria, and it's like how it just finds its home right there, and like,
well, you're shooting it into their colon.
Yeah, but it just stops at the colon. So this is a bacteria that just love to survive.
Well, they're
and
anaerobic bacteria that do not need oxygen. So anaerobic. Aerobic bacteria would be ones that are in air.
So you get it right there in the colon. It just says, okay, this is my home, and it stays right there.
We can't go anywhere else. It's a closed system.
Your butthole?
Yeah, your colon. It'd be like if I poured something in this glass, and you were like, why doesn't it escape if I'm holding it upright? Like, it can't unless it goes through the glass.
It can't go like back through your intestines? Because that's where the poop comes out of, right?
It won't go up. Remember, number one, you got gravity. Number two, you got things emptying down.
Okay. So you need enough force
You'd have to put a lot of force. You got like a lot of small intestine.
Okay.
So no, you're not going to be able to force it all the way up through.
So...
Well, if you have a lot of anal sex.
It's still, even no matter how big he is, It's still a really, really long way to go.
So you could never shove something up your butthole and have it go all the way through your intestines to where you could like spit it up.
Unless you pierced through. I mean, if you were to travel the
Straight
length
through
of
the
your
butthole.
colon.
No way.
No, so your colon literally goes like this.
How long is it stretched out, roughly?
Well, that's your colon. That's your large intestine.
Oh,
which
gotcha.
That's going to be like,
Yeah.
I want to say 12 feet. I could be off.
Going back to the bacteria though, like with
The small intestine's like 20
asking
times
about shoving
longer. I
things
mean, we're
up
talking like a lot of feet.
no, my questions aren't gonna be any
Yeah.
better. It's the same concept, but like, just like everything, like you'll find a way to survive. So this bacteria has to find a way. I guess
It was
finds
already
it-
in a colon. It's very easy
and
to
it's
go to another
surviving
colon.
fantastically. So it finds no reason to like we want to go to a different planet. Like it want to be like, hey, let's try to test the small intestine. We'll fight our way up.
They're not that smart. And like, no, like the reality is you're just introducing new bacteria into a system that currently is overrun with a specific bacteria. So you're just giving it competition.
Yeah, I want to really look at this bacteria and like its own little ecosystem down there in your colon and see how it all works out.
I mean, it just is what it is. The fecal transplant seems to be a pretty effective treatment. These guys are.
Are they doing it?
Yeah.
Like if it, I guess they'd have to let it go through their. Is that something they would have to get approved by the FDA? Like poop, because it's not a drug, right?
Yeah. No, I honestly, I would assume so. But I mean, the reality is there's like nothing stopping. Like, say you had C. diff, and like if I took a little specimen of my poop and like spun it up, I mean, there's not like this risk because what are you squirting it into? Like the most bacteria-ridden place in the entire human body.
That's a good.
The
point.
entire
That's a
GI
good
system.
question. Mine are all stupid.
Well,
but,
the entire GI system exists outside of our body.
so when this is done, like, is this in the United States? Like, doctors will actually do it?
Correct.
That's what I was gonna.
Okay,
yeah, that's
so
what I was
it
gonna
is
do.
like
So
a
it's-
thing that's.
No, it's not a first-line treatment, but it is a treatment, and it's not like an unreasonable
So
treatment.
could someone
But
be
used
like,
in the medical, it was like at Cleveland Clinic, like
Yes.
up the road, like they're actually taking other people's poop and like it's a thing.
Yes, this is not.
but do
an
you have to
uncommon
request it?
procedure.
So if they were like, hey, we're gonna give
They're
you
going to
these
require failure of other
antibiotics-
treatment
Oh, okay. So I couldn't
to
be
get
like,
it approved by insurance, unless you want
Oh.
to just. That's what I'm saying. Like, unless you want to like spin up some of my shit and shove it in you,
You just need to squirt it.
they legit use a turkey baster.
That's it. And it just what? Okay, so this is just like marinated in your butthole.
I mean, you
You,
probably
like,
want to get it a
swing-
little bit
shake it
beyond.
around, or-
Honestly, I don't know the procedure because I've never
Okay.
actually performed it. But like, I mean, they're squirting it in there.
Dang.
And I mean, there may be a system, but like the reality is, if you colonize your, you know, you're kind of like the end of your colon in your rectum, like you're gonna hit the rest because they're all touching
My question
But I
is,
thought you said the bacteria never works its way up. There's too much
out
coming
of the
out.
colon. There's valves and shit.
But if you just touch the end of the anus, you said it would be okay because it colonizes. Why
why
can't
don't you know more about the butthole? What is wrong with you?
I know
We're
enough.
like grilling him.
I know
What
enough
about
to be
this?
dangerous.
But I wonder. Okay, so insurance. I wonder if someone could say, "Hey, is it widely accepted enough to where they would go to a patient and be like, hey, you can either take these drugs or we can shove some poop up your butthole." I'm sure it's
I
a
don't.
technical term,
I
but-
think that, and I believe the treatment is like Flagyl, which is an antibiotic, it's an antiparasitic antibiotic. But I believe that's first line treatment, and then I want to say this is like second or third. Like, so. But the thing with insurance, anytime you're dealing with insurance, like, so when I would have a patient that, you know, I wanted to get a drug that cost more. This is the problem with medicine in the United States, is that you don't get to like, so like I would know like, all right, let's just say the third line drug, like I'd be like, this is my choice for them. That's not how it works. The way that insurance works in the United States is that the providers really don't get to make that decision. The insurance companies make the decisions.
Really?
100% all the time.
Whoa.
And the reality is, because like I would know, like, let's just say, this is not going to be a perfect example, but it'll be accurate enough. So I treated a lot of knee arthritis, and then we had varying levels of things we could do. One would be like, rehab, so physical therapy. Someone with moderate osteoarthritis in their knee isn't going to respond overly well. So then the next step would be cortisone injection, and the third step would be what's called hyaluronic acid, which is like a substance that tries to mimic the joint fluid. My young patients, I wouldn't even want to give them cortisone. They would actually break down cartilage. I didn't want to do it. I would rather skip to the third step because I knew it would be an effective treatment for younger people. I couldn't do that. There was legitimately people where I'd be like, man, I just want to like inject you with saline and say I gave you this because I don't want to like actually hurt you to get to the third step.
But it's because the insurance
they will not
approved.
Correct. They will not approve this treatment until you do that treatment.
So
and that is across the board. That is not orthopedics. That is everything that you see and do in medicine is dictated by insurance companies.
So even if I asked you, I said, hey, Al, I know that I actually want that third option. I don't want that second. You couldn't even, if you wanted to, unless I was going to pay out of pocket.
Unless you wanted to pay out of pocket.
Yeah.
Correct.
Whoa.
That's insurance.
So why is the third option even available as a just in case?
Because this is the reality of it. It's more expensive than option 1 and 2.
Right, but why would a company produce as what I'm asking? Is it because they must charge a lot?
Yeah, no, it'd be more expensive.
Option,
the company would
right?
make it because they're looking to make money, and they're recognizing that in this instance
they're banking off the people that where the second option won't work, essentially.
Right, and they know that this is a common condition, and that's what happens with a lot of these uncommon conditions. They're never funded. There's no profit for these companies. Like you go get COVID, like that's about the most profitable thing in the history of the world because everyone's going to get it, and they're indemnified. So
and the government's paying, and
they can't be sued for it. So it's like, of course, that like if you didn't make a COVID vaccine, you're an insane person. Yeah. But when you get into these other things, like and there's a ton of treatments, but it's so rigid now, and the electronic medical records in my time in medicine, which was about 12 years, in the beginning, I didn't have electronic medical records, and I saw that shift to where by the time I was done, when I entered a diagnosis into the computer, it gave me the treatments in order.
Oh, wow.
So essentially, you took it out of the provider's hands.
Like, so you couldn't even use your best judgment, even if you were like, hey, this one I probably wouldn't do. I have another.
There's people that go through the hoops and they make you run through them.
Yeah, they probably want you to do it for almost like probably legal purposes as well, right? Because the hospital it removes some.
Yeah.
If they're like, hey, we recommend this and this line.
The ability,
for every doctor.
Correct.
Where this,
and the ability for a provider to actually make decisions based on experience and knowledge, and when you think about it, just say it in my world, but I saw 50 people a week with knee arthritis. When they walked in, I could smell what was going on. You know what I mean? And you listen to them because you heard the same things 10,000 times. And then so you know what works for who, just because you've just done it so much. You go see your, a gastroenterologist and you have stomach pain. He or she can sit there, or they or whatever, can sit there and be they know within 25 seconds of you talking what's going on because they looked at you, they looked at how you looked, how you walked, your life history. They can look at your gender, your skin color, everything. You just sense it because you've seen the same pattern. Yeah. It's pattern recognition. That is it. And it's gone. It's gone. You can't do it anymore. I'm telling you, you can't do it. They've removed it.
So when somebody comes in with anything, whether or not we're talking about somebody coming in with a cold or a sickness, there's usually some sort of remedy. As a PA, I know you worked a lot in orthopedics, so whatever that might be, exercise procedures and this sort of medicine. But what kind of works best is only what you've been exposed to. But if insurance is kind of dictating that these are the medications, that whole circle of life right there is intriguing because it's how will we know what it works best if what's actually being prescribed?
Well, it's evidence-based medicine. So the problem is that they're treating everyone like they're the same person. So trying to think of how to articulate this.
I guess like you were in the field. Do you remember when new drugs are being presented and potentially being what's the committee that would ultimately grade success and actually allow it to be communicated across the medical field? And then
initially that's the FDA, so that's the FDA approval process to get a drug on the market.
On the market, but then to actually make it a recommendation, I would trust we all want to trust our doctor, but what you're saying is almost like the insurance company dictates what the doctor even has in his arsenal.
Correct.
To be like, this is the best. But
Unless
if
you
a
want to pay out of
drug,
pocket.
the insurance company can ultimately dictate what is made available. So the best drug, they could just say, like, for whatever reason. So
The reality
it's like,
is
where
that
does it go?
Medicare is the number one provider in the United States for all overall. So they kind of set the terms. So in reality, your government,
Medicare starts the process of deciding
the
what.
largest provider of health insurance in the United States is Medicare and Medicaid, which are government-provided insurances. And it's not even close, and it's actually getting worse because less people are providing
I'm
private
saying, where does it
insurance.
end? Because Medicare's deciding. That's fine and dandy, which makes sense. But it's like there's people within that little Medicare organization that are ultimately the decision makers on what is going to set the tone in the field.
Then these
And
drug companies have to then prove to these insurance companies that these drugs work. It's a web.
That's what I mean. That whole thing, like, that is fascinating.
Oh, it's a web.
I'm just like asking questions, but it's like everything's kind of corrupt in a way. But it's like, where is the ultimate decision like made that adds that whole trickle effect?
Well, and the
Because it's
thing
fucked
is,
up
like,
when you go to the
you
doctor.
have
You're
some
not
options as a
potentially
provider.
getting.
It's not like you can't, like, so let's just say I said, hey, like, I don't want to do this. There's no point in doing this. I need to do this. And that would be like a good example of that would be like a 20-year-old kid who plays football came in with a non-contact injury on his right knee, felt his knee, and it was swollen within like 6 hours. Like, I would basically be able to like listen to this kid and be like, he tore his ACL. And then, so like, but the frontline treatment, if I don't say the right things in my note, like, so I don't say, like, for instance, like this certain test, which is called a Lockman test. If I don't say that in my note, if I don't note like 6 different things, they're not going to approve an MRI for a kid with a torn ACL. And so, but like, you have to have that because you've got to have that information to move forward because the kid's going to need surgical intervention. And so you'd almost just lie to appease the insurance companies.
Or people who would lie.
No, I would lie all the time. I knew what it took to get to that level. So I wanted to get an MRI approved. I'd have to say these 5 magical words. And those magical words would then trigger the insurance company to approve the MRI. Wow. That's how it works. And it like, it's gross.
It is gross.
It's bad. And the thing is, like, but then you could also take the other side of that coin and be like, all right, well, what about the shitty provider who's just ordering MRIs on everybody that walks in the door and he's blowing through all the insurance money? And so it's like, I understand. It's like everything on earth, everything in the United States where we have like rules and we make them for a good reason, but then they go to hell.
There's people that abuse them.
It's just unintended consequences of everything. It's like the more rules we have, the more fucked up everything gets.
Yeah, that's one thing I realize. It's a lot of government is they only look at first order effects. They don't look at like second and third order effects. And that's the one sad thing is, that's what you should do. And it's like the highest power in the United States, like the government, you would hope that they wouldn't, but because all they care about is just getting reelected, I guess, right?
That's their only concern.
Yeah,
and they they never do. They never look beyond in front of their face.
Thanks for checking out this podcast. Please make sure to hit that thumbs up button before you go. If you want to watch us continue the conversation, then click on this video to your left next.